Welcome in. It is another preview for the 2025 NFL season. And today we've reached New England. I'm Jeff Parles. She's Alex White at Sports by the Book here at the South Point Hotel and Casino. Alex, a lot of expectations after Tom Brady leaves. New England doesn't do much. Belichick retires, and then he, of course, does not retire. He's now in Chapel Hill. 1 year Gerard Mayo doesn't work out. And now another former Belichick disciple is in the mix in New England as head coach as Mike Vrabel takes over in Foxborough.
And as you mentioned, a lot of expectations for Mike Vrabel coming in his first year. Of course, he does have former head coach experience, so that doesn't hurt at all. But few changes that they have made. We'll go through the roster changes. We'll go through the schedule and, of course, the odds for the division. But pretty shocking to me that for a team that won 4 games last year, finished 4-13, the expectations are very, very high. 8.5 is the win total, as you will see when we pull up that division. But isn't that a lot to ask, Jeff, here in Vrabel's first year?
Well, let's look at the division. They're the second favorite in the division. Now, granted, Buffalo is an insanely big favorite at minus 340 in this one. The Patriots are $6 with a win total of 8.5 on the season, plus 160 to make the postseason. This year, they're 30-1 to win the AFC. They're 75-1 to win it all. It's a lot to ask, but this is a totally new look roster. Now, granted, they're not new look at quarterback. Drake May showed a lot of good glimpses last year as the 3rd overall pick. I think in part there's a lot of expectation that he will move forward. Even though there was questions of how he was coached. Josh McDaniels is now back as the OC again New England. Dang, 4 times the charm, right, Alex? But again, we know McDaniels. He's a terrible head coach, but he's a guy who has been a very successful coordinator through his NFL coaching career. And Alex, just looking at the roster, and we'll look at the schedule simultaneously here, their offensive line has the potential to be a monster. Now, you draft Will Campbell at the top of the first round. He's going to be your left tackle. I loved Will Campbell at LSU. I thought he was the best. He has the potential to be the best player from this draft. That good. Former first-round pick in Cole Strange, another year at left guard. They bring in Garrett Bradbury. They bring in Morgan Moses. Again, Injury concerns for both of those guys. But when they're healthy, those guys have been high-end players at their positions at center and right tackle throughout the years. I do have questions at right guard with Onwenu. I don't think he's particularly good, but those other 4 guys have potential to be top 12 guys at their position at the offensive line, which is a massive improvement from what was a mash unit a year ago on that New England offensive line, Alex.
It really was. I mean, they did find a way to get their running game going, but passing offense, they were 32nd in the league, and hoping to make improvements there. I do think Drake May can take a step forward, and I do like the offensive line moves. I'm a little perplexed signing Stephon Diggs to help give Drake May another weapon coming off of that huge injury. I just don't know. I mean, going from team to team to team, how much he still has left in the tank, we'll find out coming off of that ACL. And then a little bit of changes in the running back room, which I do actually really like. But offensive line, Drake May takes a step forward. This is all great. I'm still not totally sold on the defense on the other side, and we'll get to it. There's a couple big moves that they did make that I do really like, but all in all, it's just such a big jump to go from 4 to, if you're looking at that over here 9. And getting a plus price, that's a 9 there. So, yeah, here's the schedule. We've talked about the East and having a relatively easy draw with who they are playing up against. So AFC North, that's not going to be very easy with the Ravens, Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. Bengals, we'll see what they do. Browns, maybe. And then the NFC South, that could be the easier draw there.
So you look at the schedule, it does look relatively soft early. I think that's part of the reason that there are a lot of expectations in New England. You open with the Raiders, a game they'll be favored in. Miami will be a short favorite, but that's a winnable game. Pittsburgh, Carolina, before you get Buffalo on a Week 5 Sunday night in Western New York, a game that New England will probably lose and be a big underdog in. But then you get New Orleans and Tennessee and Cleveland, 3 straight games, Atlanta, the Jets on a short week down there, the Giants at home. This is a very manageable schedule. Now they have a late bye, which Alex, I don't love for teams when they have the bye early week 5, week 6, and I don't like when they have the bye week 14, week 13. I love seeing teams with the buys in week 8, week 9, really slice that schedule in half as opposed to front load or back load. When New England has the front loaded because of that, they don't have their bye until week 14. After the bye, they go Buffalo, Baltimore on the road at the Jets and Miami. Not particularly the easiest 4-game stretch in the season. So you gotta get your wins early. Boy, this is a pretty manageable schedule. I'm just more concerned about the roster. You mentioned Stephon Diggs. How much does he have left in the tank coming off of a significant knee injury a year ago? They are improved on the offensive line, but Diggs is their best pass catcher. Their pass catchers are Matt Collins, Stephon Diggs, Demario Davis, Boutte, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper. There's no elite guys. There's just a lot of just average pass catchers in the rotation. You really need the quarterback, Drake May, to have a big leap if those guys are going to look high end. Running back room, as you mentioned, is pretty good. Stevenson, Gibson, and Travion Henderson, the rookie out of Ohio State. Pretty good collection there. New offensive line could help those guys have a big year. Stevenson had a bizarre year a year ago as their running back. And then you mentioned the defense, where they go out, they bring in Robert Spillane, the big-time tackler from the Raiders. They bring in Carlton Davis, which is a big improvement at the opposite side of Christian Gonzalez, who has been every bit as good as they could have hoped. Yep. Their former first-round pick in 2023. They bring in Milton Williams and Harold Landry to help out up front. They made good improvements on defense. Again, I'm just concerned that the improvements that were made on offense, their offensive line is better. Don't trust their skill position players enough. Their defensive improvements, I don't love Carlton Davis as much as others do. Spillane is a good player, but you always have concerns when your big acquisition is that type of player in this day and age of the NFL. But boy, you're right. Even with the roster improvements, this is a lot to ask. A 5-win improvement. And remember, that 4th win last year was week 18 against the Buffalo Bill backups a year ago. Right. So it was really, they beat Cincinnati, they beat the Jets. Those were the only wins when the season was still kind of really going. And that Cincinnati win was week 1. We know how bad the Bengals are early in the season in the Burrow era.
Very true. I will say I do really like the Milton Williams pickup, and you can see a lot of teams are kind of shifting and really going for those interior defensive linemen, I think for good reason. And their defense, pretty average, 22nd rank in the league last year. They were 10th in passing defense. So you already brought up the secondary, and hopefully they can stay there and maybe even make even more improvements there. And then looking at their rushing defense, though, 23rd rank, points allowed 22nd, so not terrible, but definitely need to make another step forward. Terrell Williams, DC, comes over, has worked with Vrabel before. They are looking to kind of change the look of this defense, where it has always been a 3-4 under Belichick. Now it is going to shift a little bit more to a one-gap attacking approach. Might look more like a 4-3. So we'll see how that all happens, all in year 1 for Mike Vrabel. But to your point, Jeff, about the schedule, I don't love the odds for them for those first 4 or 5. Yeah, I think the next chunk, 5 through 9, maybe those are some winnable games.
Or 6 through 9 after Buffalo, right, Alex?
Yeah. Yes, after Buffalo. Yeah. I think that those first 4 are going to be tougher than people think for them, and it's going to be a uphill battle from there.
And we'll say again, again, I don't want to be making the case here because again, I think the expectations are too high, but you get 3 of 4 at home. Pittsburgh, we don't know what Aaron Rodgers and company are going to be in the Steel City. They have a very wide range. They could be contending for a Super Bowl appearance. They could finally go underwater in a Mike Tomlin season this year. It's all over the place, and I think I'd rather see them in week 3 than I would in week 13. Personally, Rodgers still figuring it out. By the way, Drake May.
Just remember that defense, though, coming after Drake May, too.
Yeah, I don't think that defense is as good as others do, but we'll get to that on the Steeler preview a little bit later. Drake May can get as good. This is a wide range. Make sure you're betting at the right shop. He's 60-1 at FanDuel. He's 35-1 to win the MVP at DraftKings. So if you think New England's going to have a monster season and it's because of Drake May, bet him at FanDuel right now at 60-1. I would just tread carefully in that regard if you're going that front. Yeah, I think the whole ball wax for New England this year comes down to what they do the first 4 weeks of the season, Alex. If they come out and start 3-1, okay, things can happen here for the New England Patriots at 3-1. If they don't, all right, you know what? Then you really got to go 3-1 in that 4-game stretch from week 6 to week 9 to give yourselves a shot. Yeah, you look, there's a scenario where New England could get out through 9 weeks, could get out 6-3. There's a scenario where that happens. I don't think it's likely, but you win the 3 home games at the top of the season or whatever, split Miami and Pittsburgh for those, and then go 3-1 in that Saints, Titans, Browns, Falcons stretch. Yeah, you're 6-3 going into a trip to Tampa in week 10. You got an opportunity in that scenario. Now, granted, the schedule is much more difficult in that back end where, all right, they'll be favored at home against the 2 New York teams. And I think Miami's bottoming out, as I said on the Dolphin preview. They'll be favored week 18, at least in my book. But at the Bengals, at the Bucks, the Jets, if they're follow the path you and I think, the Jets probably, that could be a pick'em game in week 17. They'll be obviously, Patriots will be a dog at Baltimore in week 16. That schedule gets progressively more difficult. If you're betting New England to make the playoffs at the plus 160 price, you're betting New England over 8.5 at plus 105, you better get a 6-3, 5-4 start in those first 9 games if you're going to get there, Alex.
Man, I think there is absolutely zero value at plus 160 for New England to make the playoffs. We're looking at the Miami Dolphins that are plus 180, who they just barely missed it last year, right? And we're there the 2 years before, and we're looking at a Jets team that's just as talented, I believe, at plus 475 to make the playoffs. I think these 3 teams are very, very even, and that's where I am with this division. I think it's Buffalo's division, and then it's pretty much these 3. So I'm not putting my money on the overs or that cheap price plus 160. And, if they go 3-1 and you don't get a good price like that, so be it. But if they start 1-3 and then you still saw signs and you think they could, rattle off a few more wins there, you'll get an even better price than that for them to pull through and make the playoffs. But I'm leaning more towards the under for sure. And I think the books are correct with that minus 125 juice for under 8.5.
I would lean under as well. A schedule does give me the slightest of pauses. Again, you and I are in a total agreement in this AFC. Buffalo doesn't win the AFC. Something went horribly wrong in Western New York. They are the biggest division favorite on the board by margin of minus 340 for a reason. And look, New England, Miami, look, I have Miami finishing last in this division. I just think they're going to completely bottom out. The Patriots and the Jets rosters are a lot closer than I think people are giving the Jets credit for. It's going to come down to quarterback play for both of these teams. And look, we saw a lot of good from Drake May, but you mentioned it. They still struggled on offense in a big way a year ago. It's a lot to ask to win an extra 4 games when you're going, an extra 5 games when you're going with a win total of 8.5 from a team that won 4 a year ago. That is a lot to ask, even with the improvements on this team and with the improvement in head coach. So I would lean to the under at 8.5 as well. But I just want to go on, again, I've said this on every episode, so I got to do it. You know where I'm going.
That's right, Coach of the Year.
The Coach of the Year, where Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson are your 2 betting favorites, depending on the books. Either it's 6-1 or 7-1 on Vrabel, depending on which book you're shopping at. And I've said it on the Bear episode. If Ben Johnson and the Bears make the playoffs, the only guy that can realistically catch him is Mike Vrabel if the Patriots make the playoffs as well. These are the 2 guys. If New England makes the playoffs and the Bears don't, Mike Vrabel's going to be the Coach of the Year in the NFL. If New England does not make the playoffs and the Bears do, Ben Johnson is going to be the head coach or Coach of the Year in the National Football League. Unless, again, look, if the Raiders randomly pop a 10-win season and make the playoffs, then maybe Pete Carroll can get in the way. You and I were higher on the Raiders than the market seems. We just don't love the division they're in. Same deal with Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. What if Arizona wins the NFC West? He could sneak up, and you know what? Aaron Glenn is live if the Jets somehow make the playoffs at that big, gigantic plus 475 price. But the way this looks, and I wonder if Vrabel gets hurt because, look, the Bears and the Patriots both have similar expectations by the win total. But it really feels like that a lot more people are hyping New England this year than Chicago because really, again, even though it's Ben Johnson, there were some expectations around the Bears a year ago. With Caleb Williams as a rookie, reworked roster. All right, Eberflus maybe won't be as big of a train wreck as he was in the early portion of his head coaching career in Chicago. There was some expectation around there, and they obviously fell flat on their face in Chicago a year ago. Now that's kind of the thing in New England, right? Improved roster. Now we know it's an improved head coach from Mayo to Vrabel. In the end, Alex, again, I like the Bears to make the playoffs. I don't like New England to make the playoffs, so it would be Ben Johnson at the moment. But if the Patriots make the playoffs, Mike Vrabel is going to be, at worst, number 2 on the Coach of the Year list for everyone. So if you think New England's going to make the playoffs, I think you're obligated to take a piece of the best number available on Vrabel to be Coach of the Year.
I agree. I think that's a better value play than taking them to make the playoffs. I just think there's a lot of other teams in the AFC that's going to make it pretty hard. I'm not even sold that this division's getting 2 teams in to the playoffs.
Yeah, well, look, it'll come down to in this division, in this conference, and we'll have more NFC North teams. Again, we're going based off season win totals. So all the AFC North teams don't start showing up until later because it's 8.5 or more for 3 of the 4. Pittsburgh right in line with this New England team. It's going to come down to what the actual strength of the West and the North are, right?
Correct. Yep.
And you know what? This kind of goes for the AFC South teams too. You play in a slightly weaker division with a relatively reasonable cross schedule for the AFC East. You get the NFC South this year. Yeah, you cross with the AFC North, which isn't great. But you know what? Guess what? You have the opportunity to beat some of those teams and get some tiebreakers. If you beat Pittsburgh, you beat Cincinnati in the AFC North, or heck, even if you upset Baltimore, any of these teams except for Buffalo, who will be favored week 1 against the Ravens. So, again, I wouldn't bet anything like Super Bowl or AFC with New England. You and I are in the same boat here. The Patriots will be better, sure, but it's a lot to ask that they're going to go from 4-13 to 9-8 or better, make the postseason. I think we're in agreement that under is probably the way to look, or not probably, it is the way to look at 8.5 with the New England Patriots. But hey, this might be one of those good for us where if they start 6-3, maybe you come under in the midseason win totals on New England, because if they start 6-3, they're going to be 10.5, maybe even 11 at that point. And I think that's crazy based off the remainder of that schedule. Correct. Because other than the 2 home games against New York, those are the only 2 games that dealt the Jet and Giant game. And of course, I should have said the New Yorks, not just New York. But other than those 2 games after week 10, there'll be a dog at Tampa. There'll be a dog at Cincy. There'll be a dog at Baltimore. There'll be a dog at home against Buffalo. Who knows? Again, it depends on what the Dolphins are in week 18. And again, based off our trajectory for the New York Jets, for both Alex and I, we both like their over 6. The Jets, that could be a pick. That could be, the Jets could even be favored in that game potentially, with the way the Jets' schedule is really front-loaded this year. The back end of their schedule is pretty easy and could be flying in on winning 4 out of 5 because of the way their schedule is.
I think that is a great point. I think you could wait and see how they do first half, because you're right. You just named off all of those teams, and it is definitely a tough second half here for the Patriots. So we'll see. A lot of expectations for Mike Vrabel and Drake May and company. A lot of expectations.
See how it plays out. This is an interesting team here in Foxborough. Again, if Drake May takes a huge leap, you know what? They could win 11 games. It's possible. They have the path, but in the end, it's just so much to ask for with the New England Patriots. Again, 4-13 a year ago, a win total of 8.5 here for the New England Patriots, with a plus 160 on the S for the Patriots to make the playoffs. All right, that's the New England Patriot team preview. She's Alex White. I'm Jeff Parles. We will have more NFL previews to get to. We're going to get all 32 teams in the lead up to the NFL season here this year. Again, if you watch us every single time, 10 a.m. Monday through Friday on the show, live here at the South Point studio. Make sure you subscribe to the channel at Sports by the Book. Again, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time, every Monday through Friday right here at the South Point studio. We'll see you next time on the NFL preview, Sports by the Book, South Point studio.